Hi, everyone. Welcome to Potluck Food Talks. Today, I'm here with Esther Merino, and we're going to talk about drinks, mixology, traveling around the world, being a liquid gastronomy professional. How are you, Esther?
Hi, hello, Eric. I'm very happy to be here with you.
To begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you begin in the food and drink world?
So basically, it wasn't planned at all. I was studying law, and then I perfectly remember IKEA opened in my city, so I applied to have like a part-time job. In this case, I end up studying my last year of the Bachelor of Law, putting meatballs.
IKEA, like the furniture store, like
the home furnishing stores. Yeah.
Okay, wow. I heard. I'm not sure if that's true, but I heard it's the largest restaurant chain of an European brand because most restaurant chains are, American or from abroad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure, but it could be perfectly because like it's insane. It's super big.
And the restaurant experience is a key part of the IKEA experience, I think.
Yeah. We are the ones that really are selling furnishing because we are the ones that made you stop, you eat, and then you buy again.
Yeah, exactly. And also for the family, some people that don't want to buy, just go to the restaurant and spend the day there. And how was the experience working there?
Was amazing. I end up working with them for years. The process, especially the process of internal learning, the trainings, the empowerment there was amazing. Was one of the best experiences in my life in those terms. And then I remember in the 4th year, I just had a big training in another city. Like they pay my travel, my flight, my hotel room, and so on. And then when I came back, to my position, I saw that Basque Culinary Center exists, basically. And then I was reading my options, and I had the chance to ask for a sabbatic year to study. So right after coming back from the training, I asked for this sabbatic year. And of course, I was kind of nervous, kind of shaking as well, because like, imagine, you're just coming from an amazing learning journey week. They pay for everything. They teach you so many things. And then you're asking for leaving 1 year. And at the end, it was even more awesome because I perfectly remember the director of the shop in Valladolid where I was working. He told me, I'm not giving you 1 sabbatic year. I'm giving you 4 sabbatic years to study the whole bachelor.
Oh, wow.
So imagine. Was amazing.
And I want to know more about the working in a restaurant in IKEA. I can imagine like the whole procedure manuals. Do they look like the catalog of IKEA or with the whole branding system, or how is it?
Actually, this is an amazing question, Eric, because like normally you will imagine like an encyclopedia, like a big book, a thick book with a lot of information. And of course, we had some manuals and procedures manual. But they were very specific in terms of like how you manage the food safety things or how do you make a salmon roll or things like that, like the basic protocol. But then we had an amazing intranet where you have there everything. So actually, I think is one of the keys of IKEA in this case, because it's a real tool, Sometimes you have a big book that basically is having dust in a shelf is not a tool anymore.
Nobody uses it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then with the intranet, what was way more easier, way more efficient as well. And you have whatever you want to imagine, you had it there. So yeah.
Yeah, super cool. Having a good learning management system. I heard that Magnus Nilsson, did he also start at IKEA? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
But there is like a famous Nordic chef who also started at IKEA. That's funny.
Could be. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
So then you went to BCC.
Yeah. I went to BSCC in 2014. And then, of course, I was thinking in the chef side. I wanted to study avant-garde cuisine and be the most amazing chef in the world and blah, blah, blah. But then, thanks to all the teachers, like we are surrounded by amazing people, right? In Basque Culinary Centers. Sometimes we don't even realize how lucky we are about all the people we know, all the people that is sharing their knowledge. So basically, I had Pilar García Granero, Coro, Gonzalo Parras, Ainhoa, Irene, Patsy, and they start sharing with me a lot of knowledge about customer interaction, service, wines. And then inside me started to grow this feeling of like, wow, I really like to cook, but I really love to see how the guests enjoy a drink or an elaboration and explain it, and also like kind of being the representative of everyone that takes part in the experience. Like I'm representing the chef sometimes, I'm representing the winemaker sometimes when I'm putting a wine. So yeah, at the end, in the bachelor, I decide to continue with the avant-garde. So as you know, in the third year, you have to choose one specialization.
Yeah, just to make a short note on that, at Basque Culinary Center in the bachelor degree, after the third year, you can choose between 3 specializations. It can be business and innovation. The other one is food science and industry. And the other one, which is the one that Esther took, is avant-garde, which is basically working around avant-garde restaurants, high-end restaurants.
Yeah. And basically, since the beginning, I start to have very clear this idea of like, wow, everything that I would say is not new anymore in kitchen is going to be something new in the service part. So I can apply a lot of the avant-garde and cutting edge techniques for interactions with the guests, for plating up in front of the guest as a waiter. And also then something that really changed my mind was realizing like, wow, if I cook liquid in front of the guest, I will have this eye of chef and I will have this eye of service or waiter. So I will have both within a profession that is bartending. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty much neglected craft, the one of service, front of the house, interacting with the guest. And I think it's 50% of the experience. Like it's like in movies, you have sound and image. It can't be just one. It has to be the combination of both, right?
I had a lot of conversation about it. Basically, one of the most important ones for me was with René and Annegret from Noma. Annegret is we all know who is René, but Annegret is the restaurant manager, the front of the house leader. And they were saying that a good service will save a burnt sandwich, but the most amazing sandwich will not save a bad service. And it's totally true.
Yeah, I completely agree. Was there a moment when you realized that, okay, I really like doing this, being at the front of the house?
Right after the presentation of my thesis, that just to summarize, I end up being with an anthropologist in Barcelona analyzing the human behavior around cocktail bars. Was super interesting. But imagine even my family, I perfectly remember my father saying like, okay, Esther, law, then chef, then front of the house, then bartender, and now you're with an anthropologist. Like,
yeah, well, that anthropologist, his name is Sergio Gil.
Yeah.
And he's the one who coined the term gastropology, which is a merge between anthropology and gastronomy. And he uses his restaurant as a lab to understand precisely interaction with guests or how the ecosystem of a neighborhood works. Specifically, it's super interesting, everything he does.
Yeah, basically it's like a social laboratory where you can analyze really the human behavior with food, but also the human behavior itself, because a bar is something that is semi-private and semi-public. So yeah, you get a lot of amazing information and like actual information that you could not get from anywhere else or from any other discipline. So yeah, I learned a lot. And yeah, I was answering my father, like, I know I have to specialize, but right now I have the feeling that I need to explore more, right?
And your thesis was, what was the topic of your thesis?
Wow.
To make it the short story.
It's called The Floating Host.
Okay, wow.
And it's based on analyzing the role of a waiter or a bartender, because sometimes we are managing things that from the guest will be totally unnoticed, but it will be 100% changing the experience. Like imagine that you have, for example, the first date, and then as a bartender or as a waiter, I can feel that there is a little bit of distance between you both. And then I change a little bit the temperature of the light, or I put a candle, or I change the music in a more relaxed or romantic one.
Mm-hmm.
So that thing will change your experience because you will be more relaxed and will start talking with your date and so on. But it's something completely unnoticed. You will not be aware about if I'm changing the music or no, or who is the one managing that.
Yeah.
So all this management of intangibles make us be a floating host that is floating.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I think we did an episode on restaurant user experience, and I mentioned these experiments of Charles Pence,
Yeah.
where he would use music in supermarkets, and in the wine section with Italian music, people would buy more Italian wine, and Spanish music, more Spanish wine. But this is something nobody notices. It's just the results, the numbers, and it's super interesting.
Going back to the beginning, I have to say, for example, in IKEA, they had studied that since the beginning. Like, we are not inventing nothing new at all.
Of course, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure that big companies like IKEA know exactly which music to put to enhance sales. Mm-hmm.
Because I personally remember one manual of like the type of music we have to put if the shop was empty or full or packed or Yeah,
it's psychology, basically.
Exactly.
Then you also you went to the Philippines and you worked with Chele at Gallery.
Yeah.
How did you end up there?
Wow. Because actually one of my best friends, I'm from Valladolid and she's from Valladolid. Her name is called Julia. She fell in love with a guy from the Philippines, and now she's happily married with 2 kids. And I really wanted to visit her because she was talking a lot about the biodiversity of the Philippines, the different ingredients, and the different parts and islands and so on. And I really wanted to know more about it, right? And then I started looking for places to go, and I found out Chile. And of course, Chile has an amazing CV. I mean, he's been from Nerua to El Bulli to
Mugaritz.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Mugaritz, many different restaurants in Spain and in the world. And then he opened a gallery. And like since the beginning, he was like super successful in the Philippines as a chef, like trying to enhance and showcase the biodiversity of the Philippines. So yeah, I decided to go with him.
Yeah, the concept of the restaurant is, as you say, is enhancing the territory, right? Like they work with, if I'm not wrong, only local products, only product from the Philippines, in a very avant-garde way.
Exactly. And it's, I think it was back at a time, he was very clever because he was presenting something familiar in an unfamiliar way. Like, for example, he was using toasted sticky rice or like whatever, like a local produce from the Philippines, but he was using flavors or ways to cook that for him were familiar, but not for the Philippines. So a lot of techniques and combinations from the north of Spain specifically from Cantabria, but also from Basque Country and Asturias and so on. So he was mixing very well the products with techniques that he knew that worked well together, but were very unknown and not common in the Philippines.
In the Philippines, you say the spring rolls are called lumpias, right?
Lumpias, yeah.
That's funny because in Venezuela, you say lumpias as well. And in the rest of the world, the Spanish-speaking world, you say spring rolls, the literal translation.
Yeah.
And I was recently in Singapore and I saw this. I found out that lumpia is a Philippine word. And I was like, wow, this is crazy because I don't know how that word came only to Venezuela. I want to find that out.
It will be very interesting to see from the anthropological perspective because it's totally linked. The Philippines was, I'm going to say, discovered.
It was a Spanish colony, right? For a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It was a Spanish colony. We end up there in the same way that we end up in Latin America.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be very proud of that. But at the end, we were there and the Philippines were, the islands were super important because it was a base for the commerce exchange. So it was one of the principal points to go to America, take some products, then stop in the Philippines and then continue.
Okay. It was like a key logistic point.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you can see, for example, in the Philippines, one of the most traditional dishes is kare kare, which is like an oxtail cooked in a kind of a Spanish style, but with a cashew nuts sauce. And then it has a achiote as well. And for me, it's like, wow, it's super representative, this mixture of cultures. And like you have achiote that is from Latin America. You have an elaboration that is mainly from Spain and is cooked in a Spanish style. And then you have the cashew nuts and another herbs that are more typical from the Philippines. So it's a very good example of this mixture. And I'm totally sure that lumpia will be something like that for sure.
Yeah, I'm also sure about that. I have this friend, Ivan Brem. I interviewed him. He has this restaurant in Singapore called Nori. And what he does is he focuses on what he calls crossroads cooking or crossroads gastronomy. And this is an exact example of that, of this foods traveling across the world and meeting in a specific point and creating these new combinations of flavors in a kind of organic way, not forced. And all of his developments are like this. He actually has in his research and development side of the restaurant only anthropologists to kind of find this type of stories.
That's amazing.
It's also interesting to know that the San Miguel beer, which is one of the major brands in Spain, it was created in the Philippines. So if you go there, there's a lot of San Miguel beer, right?
A lot. And also San Miguel owns not only the beer, if not like, sorry about it, but the shittiest gin that you can find in a 7-Eleven and things like that. Also, I mean, they are huge in the Philippines. And also it's very common to see, for example, Torres. And I remember in 2016 that it was the first time I was in the Philippines. Brandy wasn't a thing in Spain. It was like very in decadence, let's say. And in the Philippines was like totally the opposite. And I was like, wow, really? They are drinking more brandy than us. Like that should mean something. And we have to realize like, why? So, yeah.
Yeah, like post-colonial consequences, probably.
Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of words in Spanish, like cuchara, baño, toalla.
That are also related to the Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah, are part of the, it's called Tagalog, the language in the Philippines. I mean, it's very difficult. I remember, for example, to say, hello, how are you? Is like, kumusta po kayo? So nothing related with Spanish, I think.
A little bit. There are some like...
That the accent,
okay.
The way you pronounce, and like some words, specifically, Kelly, I remember cuchara, toalla, baño, are the same.
Okay. Then you went also to Noma?
Yeah, that was like after finishing the bachelor and then working during almost 2 years in Vascular Center as a freelance with Pachi Tretinho, that was my partner as well. Then I basically decided to go to Copenhagen. I asked to have 3 months to go to Copenhagen to analyze something that I really wanted to analyze, that was the touch points between front of the house and sustainability. So analyzing the touch points between our daily activities and how is the importance of that or the impact in sustainability. So I asked to be at Amas for that. And then I asked to be at Noma for that as well. And then when I finished these 3 months in both the restaurants doing this kind of internship, they offered me a position. And then I was at Noma like few time, but very short time, because it happened the first lockdown in Denmark. So I have to say I was very lucky because they opened Popel. So all of us, we went to start working with Popel. And imagine when Renee told me like, okay, Esther.
Popel is this burger place.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a fancy burger place. And
I mean, it's more like a casual restaurant. It's not a burger place anymore, because at the beginning, of course, in the pandemic, it was only about the burgers. But right now, for me, it's one of my favorite restaurants. About the sides, about the way they cook veggies and seasonal food is insanely good.
Okay, I had it on my list. I was recently in Copenhagen. I didn't visit the Popel. I went to a few other restaurants.
You have to go. It's great. It's super tasty, super delicious. And also, like, you can feel that it's like a casual Noma. Like the way they cook the veggies, all the sides are, I mean, the burger is very good, of course, but the way they cook the sides, the vegetables, is amazing. And then, yeah, Renee told me like, okay, Esther, all the ingredients that we have from the Noma fermentation lab, do you want to use them for cocktails? And I was like, like Alice in Wonderland, you know,
Of
like,
course.
wow.
Disneyland, of course.
Yeah.
So you were developing cocktails for Noma during the lockdown. This was...
At the beginning, I was a part of the front of the house waiter at Noma. And then after, I think it was 17, 20 days, it happened the lockdown, I went to Popel. And together with Francesca Niro, I start building up the concept of everything that wasn't wine. So from non-alcoholic drinks, mocktails, juices, and of course, cocktails. And then also it was very challenging because of course, we had to create everything for takeaway. But I've learned so much back at a time, like so much, the way you can make so much money, giving accessibility to the most of the population to amazing ingredients from the Noma fermentation lab, and also how to use them. I remember we had a very successful drink that was called the Bloody Frankie, that was based on the flavor profile of a Bloody Mary. And it was pre-batch, so it was in a bottle, and then you buy it and you drink it at home or wherever you want. And the ingredients were lacto-fermented plum juice, lacto-fermented cherry juice, saffron kombucha, like ingredients like that. So nothing related at all.
Nice. That sounds amazing.
Nothing related at all with Bloody Mary. But the combination and the way we present it, linking with the Bloody Mary, made it very successful. Like, yeah, we were doing the opposite as we were talking with Chele. We present something unfamiliar in a familiar way. So through the concept of Bloody Mary, we create this cocktail and was so delicious and super successful. Like I was learning a lot about like, wow, I'm bottling so much quantity of this stuff and we are selling a lot and people really like it. And like,
yeah, alcohol became like a common hobby during the lockdowns.
Of course, but we have both the alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and also the learning process of like the shelf life, the way you present, the packaging.
Were you also doing cans or only bottles?
Only bottles. Mm-hmm. I was going my day offs. I was going to empirical to just for like in my free time, just to learn how to use the big equipment.
Okay, so just to explain, empirical is a company that was started by two ex that work in the Nordic Food Lab and also in the R&D of Noma, and they started this company creating spirits in a way that no one has seen before, because they started making a crossover of traditional distilling techniques of the west of Europe and mixing them with fermentation techniques of the Japanese and other cultures. For instance, the ones you used to make sake, and combining this all to create new crazy ways of doing liquors, which is amazing.
Yeah. They started creating new categories every week. Every time they presented something, it was a new category, something that you couldn't say that was gin or whiskey or any like traditional category, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And also like missing these amazing techniques and innovation. So yeah, I wanted to learn from them. They've been such an inspiration for me. And yeah, and then I was going in my day off just to learn, just to help them and learn how to use the different equipment. And there we were doing cans. And I mean, the cans of Empirical are delicious, are super delicious.
Yeah, I've tried a few of their drinks, and it's always something impressive and different and new. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Amas. What were you doing at Amas?
Amas was the first place where I started this project about analyzing the touch points between sustainability and front of the house. And also, of course, like it was always an inspiration, especially Matt Orlando, that I met him when he came to Basque Culinary Center, and I fall in love with the insights and the mindset he has about sustainability. And then I went there. I asked him to do this kind of internship, just being with the front of the house team, but analyzing all the daily activities. And I learned so much. Also, not only about like the main thing that I was going based on the analysis, if not like the most simple things that normally are unnoticed because they are super simple and normally like you don't think about them. And yeah, like it totally changed my way to think in terms of sustainability being Amas. Because also for me, it was the first time I found a place where front of the house was totally involved in sustainability in the daily activities of the restaurant. And also the first time or the best example of a chef taking in count the importance of front of the house.
Yeah, like the game-changing thing they did. I can think of very few restaurants where the key value proposal is waste cooking and using things that are usually discarded and turning them into something delicious. And also Matt Orlando is a chef with an incredible background. He was head chef at Noma and Per Se in different times. So like two of the best restaurants in the world. Amas recently closed. I went to the venue where is Spora right now. And I know that Matt Orlando is traveling precisely in Singapore or Philippines or somewhere around.
He opened. He is based on. I had a very good relationship with him, and he's in Singapore. He opened together with Will Golfar.
Mm-hmm.
Air is called.
Yeah, exactly. Ivan Brem did a dinner recently with them. That's how I found out.
Yeah, and like basically he's there building up the same concept as you could find it at Amas. But there, and also I have to say Singapore right now is an amazing city and an amazing example of like how you can support gastronomy and using gastronomy as a key factor for changing society and helping society to be more aware about environment, climate change, and eating delicious and healthy.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because Singapore created a strategy called 30 by 30. They want to by 2030 produce 30% of their food, and they have like many very ambitious goals. They know that they can't be like a major player in food production worldwide because there's so little. but they can be a major player in food technology.
Yeah.
Like creating patents or even seeds or completely different things. And so there is a government foundation called Temasek, which is heavily investing in all kinds of developments around food. So anyone that has a food startup now and goes there will get funding for sure for different things, because there is a lot of funds being granted right now.
Yeah, and like it's working. I mean, it's great. As you said, such a tiny city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right now is like is the one of the biggest examples of this strategy.
Yeah, it was super interesting traveling there. Then you ended up in Alchemist. How did that happen?
Basically, I remember Lieke and Rasmus were sometimes going to Popel. And then I remember one time I was like super excited because I had a new drink and I saw Lieke and Rasmus coming for the takeaway. And I don't know why, because I never talked with her before. I knew it was her, but we never talked. And then I ran until the car and I gave her, "Oh, Lieke, please, I would love you to try this new cocktail and give me feedback." And then 2 weeks later, they announced that they were looking for somebody to have this role about the fermentation at the Alchemist. And I didn't notice that because they were asking and through Instagram and through different social media announcing that. But then one time, in this case, Diego Prado told me like, you know that Lieke asked me about you because they are looking for somebody and they think you are perfect and blah, blah, blah. And then I decided to apply and see. I perfectly remember the day we did the first meeting. He was saying me like, you were so excited and so motivated with your little bottle asking me to try it that I always keep that in mind. And yeah, I mean, it was very hard for me. I remember when I left the Popel in this case, I was crying like a baby.
Oh.
I mean, I consider Noman like Popel still my family, like Alchemist is as well. But I mean, working from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5 with all this equipment, having the freedom to create, being at Alchemist, learning from amazing professionals.
I mean, Alchemist has to be one of the best equipped kitchens in the world, for sure,
yeah.
Right? Like, it has to be in the top 5, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And for example, specifically my role, it only exists at Alchemist. At least back at a time, having somebody just to be on the fermentation for drinks and in distillation, right now I only still know Alchemist, like having this specific position.
So you were developing drinks for the menu or exactly what?
At the beginning was based on doing the mise en place and producing for the non-alcoholic pairings, like mainly one that is called Botanica. So I was doing all the fermentation from kombuchas, water kefirs, and so on. And then I was very lucky because I had a colleague called Marie. Marie, back at that time, was the head bartender. And of course, they had an amazing equipment, and I had 50% of my time to do R&D and 50% of my time to do the production and the mise en place. So I started to play a little bit. And of course, from Basque Culinary Center and especially working with Patti Trutiño, I knew how to use the rotable and how to distill. So I started playing around. And I remember the first day I distilled a pistachio spirit. And I present to Marie like, "Hey, Marie, look at that. It's delicious." And she was like, "Wow, I'm going to use that for a cocktail in the menu." So we start like very naturally without thinking about it, working like that. I was distilling things or presenting new things, and Marie was integrating those things in the cocktail menu, both in the lounge and in the balcony. So at the beginning and at the end of the experience at Alchemist. So, I mean, I love it because without planning, it's like me and the company, we create this position because at the beginning was only fermentation, but at the end I was fermented drinks and craft spirits at Alchemist. So both extremes, like alcohol and non-alcohol. And was amazing.
That sounds really, really amazing. Were you also working in the front of the house or only in the back and the R&D?
No, I was working in the back. I did service for a month, something like that, because a colleague, Nina, the head of the sommeliers, she was going to a competition. And then also it was very important for me to be in the service this month, because back at that time, I started being in charge also of the creation of all the cocktails because Marie left. And then it was very good for me to see how the guests experience the cocktails, how the guests behave, the feedback, and so on. And also very good to be on the service because you learn the timings, the procedures. If perhaps, I don't know, kombucha is better to serve in another type of glass or, yeah. So I was a month. I learned a lot as well. And like was very important for me to have this month.
How many sommeliers are in Alchemist?
Wow, a lot. Right now, I'm not sure. But before I left, they were 7. And then, in front of the house, they were like 29, 30 for 48 people 4 days a week.
Wow, incredible.
But the level of study and professionalism and concentration of like, you have really to be focused when you are in front of the house at Alchemist. You have to study just to understand like the different steps, the different impressions that you are going to explain to the guests. So just for putting a foot or a feet in the service room at Alchemist, you have to study a lot. I never seen that anywhere else. Because at Noma, for example, we had a lot of training, but it was very different. It was more about how to approach the guest. We had trainings about the wines, trainings about, for example, the wild duck and how are they parts and like the origin of that and so on. Or, for example, another one about how we can change our way to speak and our sound depending on a guest that is from Asia or depending on a guest that is from the Mediterranean or from the north of Europe. So yeah, it was more based on that, the training. But at Alchemist, it was like we have a special language just with symbols and the hands just to communicate with each other. And you have to study that.
Like hand signs. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now you're working as a drink developer, like as an R&D freelance, or what are you doing exactly?
Yeah. Right now I'm freelance. I'm working mostly in academia. I still going a lot to Gastronomy Center for master classes, then doing scientific articles as well. It's something that I really like. And then the other part is beverage development. And the third part is consultancy. So these 3 different paths right now are the ones that I'm working on. But specifically, I think academia for me is the one that I enjoy the most. And then, of course, the beverage development, because you learn, you know new things, you meet people, you know new ingredients, new techniques, and it's super inspiring.
Your profile reminds me of this cocktail place that Grand Acats opened in Chicago, Aviary, which is a cocktail place. But the interesting thing is that I don't know if it still is like that, but I know that there were no bartenders. It were chefs doing cocktails, like with high-end or avant-garde culinary techniques and turning them into the liquid world. That's kind of also like your profile somehow.
I don't know. I'm very glad, very happy that you think that. Thank you very much, Eric. But yeah, Aviary changed everything. The Aviary was the first place, not only about what you are saying about like the approach of a chef mind into giving more quality and more overall about like the performance and procedures within a cocktail. Because sometimes a cocktail is like, yeah, half a lime, shake it, but how much time do I have to shake it? What is going to be the dilution, the alcohol by volume? So it wasn't very precise, and Aviary changed that. But when the first book of Aviary was like a game changer, because they start approaching the recipes with a chef mindset. So actually, it was the first time you had the same units of measure in a cocktail. That for me was amazing because I was so frustrated, like why we mix bar spoons with drops, with centiliters, with ounces, with grams, with a splash of, and yeah, and then appeared the first book of Aviary that was a game changer, and especially the other one that is called Zero that they released a little bit more than 2 years ago, that they start also a methodology of creating mocktails because they realize like it wasn't at the same level. Like people that pay $10 for a cocktail wasn't at the same level of quality the guy that was paying $10 for a mocktail. So they present this book sharing a methodology to create different layers of complexity within the non-alcoholic cocktails and new techniques for like reaching a good flavor, a good persistency, and so on. And also was, again, a game changer. So yeah, I think it couldn't be, Eric, you put the best example.
Well, it also comes to my mind, El Bulli. They also did like edible cocktails and these kind of things in the appetizing section. I never went to El Bulli, but I read a lot and saw a lot of things.
No, you're totally right. El Bulli was the one that started everything, but the game changer was Aviary because it was an actual place, an actual cocktail bar. But literally before El Bulli, nobody was aware about like having cocktails in a degustation menu. Perhaps if somebody asked for it, yeah, the classic cocktails, but not like El Bulli did. And also something that amazed me is El Bulli from 1998 start to documentate all the cocktails in the same way they did the documentation for the food.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the 455, that is I think this number is for, I don't know if it's the whiskey sour pastilla or the hot frozen gin fizz, but anyways, they start to treat at the same level of importance, cocktails and food. And also every time they were presenting a new technique, they were applying in food and in cocktails. So for example, the hot foam, it was in an elaboration, in a culinary elaboration, but also it was in this case in the hot frozen gin fizz, where you have a cocktail with two temperatures. That imagine when they present in 2000. So you imagine the guy going in 2000 having a cocktail with two textures and two temperatures.
Something from another planet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How is your creative process? If you are to develop a new drink, what's your starting point? Could you share like an example?
So always my starting point is the anthropological perspective. As I told you before, like since I met anthropology, is something I will never get rid of. It changed my way of see the things. And I always start analyzing the relation between humans with this technique or the ingredient or the concept I want to develop. And then once I define that, I start to look into more the food science part in terms of the technique, the reactions, the behavior, the technological properties that I can apply from a ingredient. And for example, one example, because I always put the same examples and today I want to put a new one. So it's called a cocktail called Viva Mexico, because as a Spanish, I wanted a way to say I'm sorry to Latin America because what we did when we conquer Latin America or discover, let's say, through a cocktail. So through Viva Mexico, I was taking the concept of the milpa. That is something that you will find in Mexico, of course, but also in Venezuela, in Colombia, in many different other parts. And then taking corn, chile habanero, and tamarind and hibiscus as the main ingredients.
Super Mexican ingredients. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So here the goal was like not to use orange or lemon at all, So all the acidity of the cocktail was coming from the tamarind and the hibiscus. Then I did vacuum distill chili habanero spirit, distilling habanero based on alcohol, and then distilling habanero vinegar, and then doing a blend between both of them because capsaicin is not volatile. So you will not have all the spiciness. You will be able to feel the cucumber, the watermelon, the melon that this chile has itself.
That's the one I tried at your place last time?
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Yeah, it's super good. And then mixed with the tamarind and the hibiscus. And then on the top was a corn foam with a smoked bark to have this kind of corn smoky flavor profile, also with different texture. And yeah, it was a way to say I'm sorry through the concept of milpa and as a Spanish to Latin America.
That's it for this week's episode of Potluck Food Talks. If you like what we're doing, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok as Potluck Food Talks. The show airs every Monday.